Chance to get into the webinar. Welcome to the March ASAM Technical Assistance Series. As people are coming into the webinar, good morning. We'll go ahead and get started since it's 10 o'clock. Welcome. Before we actually get into the webinar, we have a couple disclaimers. DDAP strongly suggests reading the ASAM text in its entirety and reviewing all the resources available through DDAP documents, webinars, and training. I want to remind you that today's session is being recorded for training and/or record-keeping purposes. By participating in this session, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and use of this session. So at any time, if you feel you have a question or comment, feel free to place that in the chat and we will respond to you as soon as possible. Any verbal questions or comments made, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and use of your statements recorded as part of this session. Feel free to submit any questions to our resource account that's listed here on the screen. We'd like 7 days in advance of the monthly scheduled call if you have a question about a specific upcoming topic. Suggestions for future topics can be submitted to the same resource account, and we welcome any suggestions that you may have that you think would be helpful. Anytime we reference the ASAM during this presentation, we are referencing to the third edition published in 2013. Alignment of the ASAM criteria is required of treatment providers that receive funding for providing treatment services under agreements with single county authorities and managed care organizations. Before we get started, we have a couple polls this morning. Amanda's going to launch the first poll so we can get an idea of who is participating in today's webinar. We'll leave this up for a few seconds to give everyone a chance to respond. Just please note, if you are participating on a mobile device, you may not have access to the poll, so don't be alarmed if you're on a mobile and don't see the poll on your screen. And the options on the screen, you can scroll down. There's a little bit of a lengthy list here. So just submit your role and then hit submit. And we will give it a chance to tally up everyone's responses. I'll leave this up on the screen for another second or two. People are still coming into the webinar, so if you see a poll on your screen, please indicate your role so we have an idea of who's participating in the webinar today. It looks like there's pretty wide variety of individuals. Like, good to see some clinical supervisors, directors, single county authority staff, managed care representatives, DDAP employees. If you're comfortable, if you are in another category, feel free to put your role and organization in the chat. We would love to know the different individuals who are participating. So we had 119 responses. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Here are today's learning objectives. We will be doing an overview of individualizing of treatment services with specific emphasis on group therapy using SAMHSA's tip 41, group therapy, to assist us. We hope attendees will be able to reflect on their current practice and identify areas where they may be able to make adjustments or implement new strategies that are supportive of clinically driven treatment. And we have a two-part poll next. We'd like to get an idea of who has had motivational training first. So if you could answer yes or no to the question that's on the screen first, we would appreciate that. So far, most people have had motivational interviewing training. We'll leave this up for another couple seconds, and then we'll go on to part 2 of the question. So MI training. If you've had MI training, please indicate so on the screen. And thank you very much. Looks like most people have had it. Oops, sorry. We'll go on to the second part of that question. How comfortable are you with using MI? And wow, it looks like almost half are very comfortable. That's great news. Somewhat comfortable. A couple neither comfortable or uncomfortable. And a couple that are not comfortable at all. One or two that are somewhat uncomfortable. And we'll leave this up for just another second or two. Thank you for your responses. How comfortable are you with using motivational interviewing? And still almost half very comfortable. So that's really good to know. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next screen. We have one presenter today. Victoria Jankowski is the newest member of the Quality Improvement section at DDAP. Vicki joined us this past fall from one of the SCAs. She is an LPC, and we are very fortunate to have her as part of our team. So at this time, I will turn it over to Victoria.
Thank you, Gloria, and good morning, everyone. Before we delve into the core of today's presentation, let's take some time to reacquaint ourselves with the basic tenets of motivational interviewing. The spirit of MI is based on 3 key elements: coordination or collaboration, evoking or drawing out the individual's ideas about change, and emphasizing the autonomy of the individual. Collaboration builds rapport between the counselor, the individual, and the treating program. In drawing out the individual's ideas about change, we're going to increase the individual's motivation to participate in treatment and any intervention they've collaborated with their counselor about. By giving the individual autonomy, they will have the power to change their own behavior. When individuals have a say in their treatment, that treatment is not only going to be more effective, but the individual will have a sense of personal responsibility to complete their goals and take ownership of the recovery process. Staying within the spirit of MI, each individual's journey is going to be different, and therefore their treatment is going to look different. Quality supervision is an integral component in providing quality, individualized care. In the substance use disorder field, clinical supervision has become the cornerstone of quality improvement and assurance. A supervisor is a teacher, mentor, and evaluator who is also providing support, encouragement, and education. Of course, there are payer and regulatory requirements that go with providing supervision, but consider how important good supervision is for staff retention. Consistent supervision allows for rapport building to occur between the clinician and their supervisor, which can lead to a quality relationship where trust, respect, and professionalism can be built. When a supervisor is effective in demonstrating competence in their leadership skills, a clinician can deliver reliable, high-quality work and be accountable for the work they are performing. When a clinician has proper supervision, it allows them to work toward desired outcomes with each individual on their caseload. Each member of their caseload can be reviewed and discussed to obtain proper direction and feedback where areas of strength and areas of guidance can be addressed. Ultimately, effective clinical supervision ensures that individuals are competently served. Supervision supports counselors to continue increasing their skills, which in turn enhances treatment effectiveness, client retention, and staff satisfaction. Quality supervision helps address burnout and compassion fatigue. The substance use treatment field is at risk to lose many skilled and compassionate helpers when counselors struggle with burnout, causing them to withdraw or possibly leave the field entirely. Given the empathy and dedication that brings counselors into the field, it is important for an effective supervisor to help them address their questions and doubts. Supervisors can help counselors with self-care by supporting their staff to develop lives outside of work. This must be supported by an organization's culture and policies that allow for appropriate use of time off and self-care without punishment. Aid counselors by encouraging them to take earned leave and mental health days when they are feeling tired or burned out. Remind staff to spend quality time with family and friends, exercise, relax, read, or pursue other revitalizing interests. Assist staff in adopting lifestyle changes to increase their emotional resilience by supporting them to reconnect with their community and forming habits that re-energize them. It is important for clinical supervisors to normalize the counselor's reactions to stress and compassion fatigue in the workplace as a natural part of being an empathetic and compassionate person that is not indicative of an individual failing or pathology. Help staff identify what is happening within the organization that might be contributing to their stress and learn how to address the situation in a way that is productive to the client, the counselor, and the organization. If possible, in the current work environment, set parameters on their work by helping them to adhere to scheduled time off, keeping lunchtime personal, setting reasonable deadlines for work completion, and keeping work away from their personal time. Teach and support generally positive work habits such as basic organization, teamwork, and time management skills, which encourage ending sessions on time and promoting a workday that leaves time for proper documentation. The development of these skills helps to reduce the daily wear that erodes well-being and contributes to burnout. Supervisors have a responsibility to clients to ensure counselors are healthy and whole. It is the supervisor's responsibility to aid counselors in addressing their fatigue and burnout. Good feedback is provided frequently, clearly, consistently, and is smart, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. With feedback comes an opportunity for growth and providing quality treatment to the individual served. Individualization of services begins at the level of care assessment. There are numerous ways a level of care assessment can be completed. Some providers may utilize the treatment assignment protocol and PA WITS, while others may use a biopsychosocial evaluation. Regardless of the method used to collect the information, level of care assessment should be completed with neutrality and should not be biased towards any certain provider or level of care. This assessment is comprehensive and will include areas such as the individual's history of education and employment, military service, history of substance use and periods of recovery, co-occurring physical and mental health considerations, history of trauma and support systems, to name a few. More detailed information around level of care assessment components can be found in the Case Management and Clinical Services Manual and Section 5.02, Assessment and Placement Determination. The aforementioned areas of the assessment tool will guide the assessor in identifying the most appropriate level of care based on the ASAM criteria. Once the assessor identifies the most appropriate level of care, they will discuss this determination with the individual and begin the conversation around treatment services. Keep in mind, the level of care recommended may not always be the same as the level of care the individual accepts. Working from a person-centered perspective, individuals should be engaged in their level of readiness and not based on any programmatic requirements. At times, individuals may need to be referred to a different provider who is better able to meet their current level of need. Depending on the setting of your practice, this may be easier said than done. For providers located in more rural settings, it may mean referral options are not as robust as providers located in urban settings. As a result, rural providers may need to be more creative in their service offerings and partnerships. In situations where the level of care differs from the level of care recommended, this discrepancy should be documented both on the individual's chart as well as at the bottom of the ASAM summary sheet. Because the ASAM is clinically driven, it is necessary to move away from program-driven, fixed length of stay models to an assessment-based, person-centered, and an outcomes-oriented continuum of care. In individualized services, priorities are identified in the context of an individual's severity of illness and level of function, which are identifiable throughout the documentation of individual counseling, treatment plans, and group therapy. No single treatment level of care will match the individual's needs at all times. This highlights the necessity for partnership and coordination with other community agencies to ensure all of an individual's needs are being met. In order to provide high-quality delivery of care to individuals, it is important to note that accurate, comprehensive, and timely documentation is essential. The Golden Thread provides a roadmap that illustrates both a logical and interconnected flow of service delivery. After the multidimensional risk profile produced by the assessment is developed, it is important to clearly document the findings that support the medical or clinical necessity for services being provided. These findings will be threaded into the treatment plan in the form of goals, objectives, interventions, and group assignments that match the individual's level of functioning and severity of illness identified from the multidimensional assessment. We will discuss this in more detail later in the presentation. The actual delivery of services and progression of the individual's treatment can be viewed through the individual and group progress notes. This includes any reassessment and revision to the individual's goals, strengths, obstacles, and interventions. ASAM places a high importance on routine reassessment of an individual throughout their care in order to ensure treatment efficacy, progress toward treatment goals, and any appropriate changes that may be warranted. Poor outcomes at a given level of care warrant a reassessment of the treatment plan with a perspective on modifying the treatment approach to meet the individual's needs. The treatment plan is a result of shared decision-making with the individual. Conversations surrounding the treatment plan may include addressing each dimension of concern, family and friends, the individual's personal goal as it relates to treatment. The problem statements in the treatment plan should be reflective of the problems identified in the assessment. These are written in the individual's words, which helps to ensure individuality and shared decision-making are being upheld during the treatment planning process. Each problem then has a corresponding goal and interventions. Goals on the treatment plan guide realistic, measurable, achievable, and short-term priorities focused on reducing symptoms or problems. Whenever possible, it may be helpful to have the goals written in an individual's words, remembering that individuals are often more motivated toward a goal they have created. Action steps identify who will do what to help the individual meet their goal. Individuals' interventions provide the support needed toward goal completion and are based on individual needs, counselor training, and services available to the individual within the setting they are receiving treatment. Service description includes a description of the types and frequencies of counseling that will be provided according to the individual's needs. Additionally, the service description identifies the evidence-based practices and programming that will be used. This includes evidence-based group curriculums that are based on the individual's needs, collaboration on choosing groups during the treatment planning process, or any subsequent revisions of the treatment plan is essential to an individual's readiness and appropriateness for participation in group. Additionally, it is always important to consult your payers to determine if there are additional treatment plan requirements based on funder. One aspect of treatment planning that may feel more difficult to individualize is group placement. Group therapy is a powerful tool when utilized as part of the therapeutic and recovery process. It is important when considering what group is most appropriate for an individual that you take into consideration a few different factors. The first factor to consider is whether the individual is ready for group. Factors that may contraindicate engagement in group could be an ongoing life crisis that would distract from an individual's ability to participate fully in group. Additionally, some individuals may struggle with a co-occurring mental health condition that may inhibit their ability to participate fully in group or would interfere with the therapeutic milieu of the group. Just because an individual is not able to engage in group therapy at one point in their treatment journey does not mean that they will not be able to participate in group at a different point in treatment. Attendance to group therapy should be an ongoing conversation throughout an individual's treatment episode. Overall, groups should be comprised of individuals with similar needs. Additional factors to consider when placing an individual in group is both their stage of recovery and their stage of change. As a guide, we will categorize the stages of recovery into 3 major timeframes. Please note that the following are guidelines only. The stages of recovery and the time spent in each stage is open to the counselor and the individual's interpretation. For this presentation, the recovery stages will include early, middle, and late. Early recovery is the stage when an individual is first establishing their recovery routine, but would also include the induction stage for an individual who's beginning a medication for opiate use disorder. Individuals are most vulnerable for recurrence during this time frame. Early recovery typically lasts anywhere from 1 month to 1 year. Middle recovery occurs when an individual feels more secure in their recovery process and has not experienced a return to use in a substantial amount of time. The risk of recurrence continues in this stage, but this is also the stage where much of the therapeutic work may occur. This stage can last anywhere from a year to indefinitely, as some individuals may never progress to a later stage of recovery or may lapse or revert to an earlier stage in their recovery process. In the late stage of recovery, or the maintenance stage, occurs when an individual feels secure in their recovery process and has a robust toolkit of coping strategies to manage adversity in healthier ways. The majority of you are already likely familiar with Prochaska and DiClemente's continuum that describes the stages an individual will move through when making a change within their life. We will quickly review these stages. Pre-contemplation occurs during the time frame where an individual has yet to identify that there's a problem with their substance use. Contemplation occurs when an individual is in the beginning stages of problem identification, but has not yet begun to make changes related to their substance use. In the preparation stage of change, the individual has identified there's a problem with their substance use and plans to act within the next 30 days. During action, an individual has started to make changes to their behavior and intend to keep moving forward with those changes. Maintenance occurs when an individual has sustained their changes for at least 6 months. Recurrence occurs when an individual lapses back into use, which could be short-term or long-term. At intake, you may want to explore the individual's previous experience in treatment, placing emphasis on discovering what has worked for that individual in the past versus what has not previously worked. For individuals who have never been in formalized treatment before, it may be beneficial to explore their expectations of treatment. In the next couple of slides, we're going to look at group matching to current stage of recovery and current stage of change. Remember that recovery is not a linear process. Individuals may need to attend different groups throughout their treatment journey as they make progress or encounter setbacks. This graph from SAMHSA's Tip 41 illustrates suggested group involvement based on an individual's personal stage of recovery. Individuals in early recovery will benefit from groups focused on building the basis to be successful in their recovery journey. This may look like psychoeducational groups and engagement with support groups outside of treatment, such as Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and/or Medication-Assisted Recovery Anonymous. The groups attended during the early recovery phase will be the foundational building blocks to support long-term recovery and relapse prevention, which becomes more of a focus during the middle recovery stage. In middle recovery, individuals have not used any illicit substances for a significant amount of time. There is no formula for when these stages of recovery will begin or end, but relapse prevention and interpersonal processing will be the main focus during the middle stage. For individuals in long-term recovery, their focus will shift to working through the underlying causes of their substance use and/or repairing interpersonal relationships that may have been neglected during their active addiction. It is ill-advised for individuals to begin working on these areas until they have a strong foundation of healthy coping strategies built. As you will notice on this slide and on the next slide, culturally specific groups are warranted in all stages of recovery. Support groups are also warranted in all stages of recovery. However, as an individual progresses through their recovery journey, support groups may take on a more supplemental role, but are nevertheless still important. In this additional graph taken from tip 41, which reflects suggested group involvement based on an individual's identified stage of change, as you can see, the suggested group involvement based on stage of change is much more varied than by stage of recovery. When an individual is in earlier stages of change, such as pre-contemplation, psychoeducation, cognitive behavioral therapy, and culturally specific groups are best suited. As you will see from the graph, engagement in psychoeducational groups will decrease the further along someone progresses in their recovery and the stages of change. Groups focused on supporting the individual's changed behavior and relapse prevention become more of a focus during the action and maintenance stages of change. As recovery is not a linear process, the stage of change for an individual's presenting problem can change throughout treatment. Ongoing reassessment can assist in ensuring the individual continues to be in the appropriate groups. In the previous slides, we reviewed some of the factors that should be considered when working with individuals and determining group placement. A foundational step to support individualizing services is to ensure group offerings match the needs of your clientele. Ideally speaking, it is good practice to inventory your population on an ongoing basis and to match group offerings with the individuals being served. When developing your menu of groups, programs may find it beneficial to utilize flexible group topics such as wellness that have a robust corresponding curriculum of activities. Just as important as ensuring your program has a healthy variety of group topics, it is also imperative to ensure the curriculum is refreshed on an ongoing basis in line with the field, presenting clientele, and the most recent research. Additionally, group offerings should incorporate evidence-based therapies such as cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and motivational interviewing, to name a few. Facilitating and encouraging ongoing continuing education of group facilitators is also a must. Beneficial continuing education focuses not only on enhancing the counselor's abilities to effectively utilize evidence-based practices, but also on specific training in group facilitation. Matching individuals to groups to the most appropriate group setting is essential for an individual's success. The process should be collaborative and reflective of the individual's choice. As individuals move through their treatment journey, needs will also change. It may be beneficial to review group attendance with each treatment plan update, considering the individual's strengths, needs, abilities, and preferences throughout treatment. Making this a regular practice ensures that group placement matches the individual's current goals and demonstrates individualized services specific to the person. Ensure your program has the resources available to provide a robust group offering that meet the needs of the individuals that you serve. Also keep in mind if there are limitations for group size based on your payers. If there are groups that are more well attended or in higher demand, consider offering those groups more frequently throughout the week. Group notes should provide a direct link to the goals and interventions identified on the treatment plan. As such, it is beneficial for group counselors to have access to each group member's treatment plan. If the group counselor differs from the individual counselor, both should be involved in active and ongoing case consultation. This collaboration between treatment team members will support the individualization of group notes. While some areas of the progress note may be consistent for all members of the group, notes are meant to illustrate an individual's response to group interventions. Cookie cutter notes are not a representation of individualized services. The two most widely used templates for group notes are DAP notes and SOAP notes. Both templates are very similar as both include data elements, assessment of the individual's response to the interventions, and a plan for ongoing treatment. The data section of the note will focus on the group topic and any activities completed during the group session that may pertain to the entire group. The group counselor should document things observed or measured during the group session as well. For example, the group counselor may document the individual rated their current level of anxiety as a 5 out of 10. Group notes should further document an assessment of the individual and any progress made related to their treatment plan goals. This section of the note will be the most clinical. Finally, group notes should close the plan for the future groups or possibly a plan to consult with other treatment team members. This may also include any group homework assignments. In the August 2022 technical assistance call, we highlighted a provider's experience with the ASAM alignment process. In that session, the provider identified engaging the individual by having them complete aspects of their group documentation. As that provider noted, the only section of the note appropriate for the individual to complete is the data section. While it is beneficial to reflect with the individual when documenting treatment, the group counselor should be the one completing the documentation of the individual's progress and response to interventions used during group. For example, in a seeking safety group focused on identifying safe coping skills, the individual can provide a summary of the group for the subjective and/or objective aspects of the note. This may include their response to the question, "What does safety mean to you?" However, the documentation related to the assessment of the individual during that group, as well as the plan section of the note, are the responsibility of the group counselor. An area to be mindful of when completing documentation is the language being used. One of the most important reasons to use person-centered language in your daily practice is to reduce stigma. Individuals with a substance use disorder are already struggling with feelings of guilt and shame related to their substance use. When programs use language that is stigmatizing, it decreases the likelihood that individuals will reach out for help or support and may result in a poorer quality of care. Stigma comes in many forms and can be public or a society's attitude toward a group of people. Public stigma creates environments where individuals feel blamed, judged, rejected, and unwelcome. Structural stigma, which occurs across systems and relates to policies and practices. Structural stigma can be implicit or explicit and makes it difficult for individuals to participate in their community. Self-stigma is internalized stigma, and it's an acceptance of the individual of what society says about them is to be true. Self-stigma affects self-worth and self-esteem. Consider also stigma against medications for opiate use disorder. One of the most common misconceptions about MOUD is that the individual is trading one addiction for another. Be mindful of the intersectionality of stigma, as individuals can struggle with stigma and bias in multiple areas of their life, related not only to their substance use, but also to race, class, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Review the documentation used in your program to verify if it is person-centered and trauma-informed language is being utilized in all areas of the documentation and progress notes. One simple way to personalize documentation is to utilize the individual's name on progress notes and treatment plans, rather than client or patient. This will also help to personalize the treatment for the individual by showing ownership of their treatment. Avoid referring to drug screening results as clean or dirty, and alternatively identify those results as positive or negative. Avoid referring to individuals active on your program by using stigmatizing language such as addicts, alcoholics, drug users, schizophrenics, or borderlines. Alternatively, reference their substance use or mental health condition. For more information related to ending stigma and for a recommendation guide for anti-stigmatizing language, refer to shatterproof.org. As previously discussed, the multidimensional assessment ensures comprehensive treatment through identifying problems and priorities that justify admission to a level of care. Continued reassessment is a key element of establishing both a person-centered and outcomes-driven approach to care. Individuals may experience worsened symptoms or fail to improve in a certain level of care or a given type of program. When this occurs, it is important to address these outcomes with a reassessment of the treatment plan instead of punitive measures. As previously stated, punitive measures implemented in a systematic or individual basis turns the treatment from being a person-centered, outcomes-driven to a program-centered, complications-driven, which reinforces stigma and re-traumatization. Solutions to barriers identified during a reassessment may be modifications to the treatment plan, group assignment, level of care, type of service, or intervention. When addressing the individual's progress in treatment, it is important to communicate an attitude of acceptance and to seek to understand the individual's point of view. This will help to decide if there is a need to switch motivational strategies to re-engage the individual in treatment. At times, it may be determined that a modification in strategies is needed. For programs and clinicians concerned about the individual's attitude and behavior negatively affecting other individuals in treatment or in group, it is important to remember that allowing exposure to signs and symptoms of motivation to change or recurrence provides an opportunity for a practical application of coping skills that other individuals are developing. Reassessments may help identify new information that provides insight into changes in cognitive functioning, urgency of mental health symptoms, and efficacy of medications to help manage symptoms. This can help prompt needed referrals, consultation, and supervision are obtained to continue to treat the individual in a person-centered manner. To summarize, the golden thread should be utilized when documenting treatment services. Treatment plans should be reflective of the biopsychosocial evaluation, and group assignment should support the treatment plan goals. Documentation within the progress notes, both individual and group, will link the record together and tell the story of the individual's treatment and recovery journey. Treatment planning is a collaborative process that is completed with the individual. Unless otherwise directed by your payers, individual session time could be utilized to update the treatment plan and reflect on areas of success and continued areas of need. This is also an optimal time to review group attendance and to make changes in which group would be the best fit for the identified treatment goals. To ensure your agency is providing individualized care, consider creating an internal chart review tool. As suggested by Drs. May-Lee and Schulman, take 10 closed charts and review the treatment plans. If the reviewer is not able to easily distinguish the individuals, the treatment may not be individualized. Additionally, review discharge information and against medical advice discharges to seek out any patterns, and wherever possible, check the language being used. Consider also reviewing randomized charts of active clients regularly to determine if the individual interventions documented in the chart relate back to the objectives and the strategies identified in the treatment plan. For programs that receive reimbursement from multiple payers, compare lengths of stay by payers. If the lengths of stay correspond to payer type, then the program may be payment-driven rather than offering individualized treatment. As always, we thank you for your attendance today. Please feel free to put any additional questions you may have in the chat, and the QI team will review them and post those responses to our website. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Gloria for closing remarks.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much for that information. If anyone has questions, I do see that a couple questions were put in the chat. We will address those through an FAQ and post that on the website. We will also post this recording in a couple days as well as the slides. So I just saw a question come in, how can you print this? So once we post the slides to the ASAM transition page, which you can put your cursor on, you should be able to put your cursor directly on this slide. That'll take you to our ASAM transition page, and we'll have the slides and the recording up in a couple days. Sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to post the FAQ, but we will take all of your questions in the chat and address them through the FAQ. I'll also leave this presentation up in case you have any questions that you haven't entered yet. We'll give you a chance to enter any additional questions that you might have. So that concludes our presentation today. Please join us for our next call on Monday, April 1st. The topic is planned to be on an update on the ASAM alignment reviews. And so I hope you have a very good Monday. And again, I will leave this presentation up for a couple minutes. And if you have any additional questions, you can enter those into the chat at this time. Other than that, we are finished with this presentation today. Thank you very much.